going to go ahead and turn things over to Alyssa Casavant, who is joining us from the Arthritis Foundation.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody. Happy middle of the weekday. I am very excited to talk with you about step therapy. I'm sure several of you have already been familiar with it. And just in case you are not, or you're new to this topic, we'll do a little level setting. So what is step therapy? What's the issue? Sometimes it's known as fail first. It's a practice employed by a lot of health insurers that requires patients to try therapies that are preferred by the insurance company before they can get approved for the therapy that their doctor originally had prescribed. So currently the health plans can make patients fail one, sometimes two, three, multiple products before they'll cover that treatment that was initially decided by the patient and their provider. The problem is that delays in getting proper treatment often can lead to irreversible disease progression, worsening of the patient's medical condition, and sometimes even life-threatening conditions or unnecessary surgeries, for example. I represent as co-chair for a large coalition of patient and provider groups. We are inherently not opposed to step therapy as a whole, but just want to make sure that when it is used inappropriately, that there are options for patients to be able to appeal that decision. So let's go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So for example, I just want to walk you through very quickly a real world patient experience. So say you are newly diagnosed, in this case, I'm going with arthritis because that is the patient group that I represent. Imagine you are brand new, you just got your diagnosis, your doctor says, great, let's start you on this biologic medication. You're excited, maybe you're a little nervous, maybe you're a little scared or anxious to start your new drug. You're really optimistic that you're going to start feeling better. And then you go to the pharmacy. You contact the pharmacy to fill your prescription. They say, sorry, your insurance won't cover this. You need to try this medication first, this other drug. So what do? You can talk to your doctor, you can decide to switch drugs, but ultimately, what are your options at this point? You can take the insurance company's preferred drug and then step through, so literally try to step through that drug on their list, but none of them seem to be working for you. Maybe you've tried for a couple of months about different drugs. Maybe you've tried one drug, maybe you've tried 2 or 3 drugs over 6 months or more to try to get through to the drug that your doctor originally prescribed for you. Though you might get to take that original drug at the end, sometimes patients are taking a very long time trying and failing drugs that aren't working for them and that are negatively impacting you, maybe even long-term irreversible damage. So for patients living with arthritis, we know, and a lot of the rare conditions, chronic care conditions, you know, once your disease progresses, it's very difficult to go backwards. Sometimes you develop, and we call it immunogenicity. You sometimes try a product, it doesn't work for you, and you can't start that product over again. Maybe there's a finite list of medications that you have as options to be able to take. So let's go to the next slide, Caitlin. Just as another example, because I love data, we did a survey of Arthritis Foundation advocates and patients. Over half of the patients who responded told us that they had to try at least 2 or more drugs before they could get onto the one that their doctor originally prescribed. And a lot of people will just stop taking their medication. Sometimes it has caused disease worsening, etc. So what can we do? Next slide, please. What can we do? There is a big push right now on a bipartisan federal and state level step therapy laws that would streamline the appropriate step therapy processes so that you can get the drug that works best for you. There is a federal bill, which we'll go into a little bit more in a second. It's called the Safe Step Act. It mirrors legislation that was passed in over 37 states. Shout out to Nevada, you're the most recent who passed state level step therapy. When passed into law, these measures are bringing similar patient protections that you were seeing at the state passed level to the federal plans. The difference is that employer plans, so any of us that get our health insurance through our work, through our employer-sponsored insurance, you're exempt from the state plans. The state law only applies to those individual and small group plans. So it's about 20 to 30% of individuals in that state who would be protected by state level legislation. So we really need the federal level protection to cover the gap. It's about 50 to 60% of people in a state who don't have access to step therapy processes right now because we get our insurance through our employer. So the Safe Step Act is really looking to do three main things. And it's very important to get involved at the federal level to protect that gap of people with employer-sponsored insurance. It's looking to ensure a medically reasonable and expedient step therapy exceptions process. So the first thing is ensuring that there is an exceptions process to begin with. So anyone with employer-sponsored health plan would have the option to appeal the decision, would require plans to respond to that process just with any kind of a decision within 24 hours, 72 hours, and then 3 would establish circumstances when an exception should be granted. So we're looking for transparency in the process. We're looking for a quick time frame to get a decision on that appeal. And we're looking for being informed, requiring consideration of the patient's medical history, trusting that the patient provider have the best decision-making opportunities, and that you know what the right product is for yourself. Next slide, please. So where are we today? The Safe Step Act at the federal level has been reintroduced. It is the 3rd Congress that the bills have been introduced. This year, so far, since it was reintroduced, we have 64 House co-sponsors, 29 Senate co-sponsors. You'll see in the graphs here, I just did a little historical background. So we're on target for meeting a lot of co-sponsors this year. We have a goal to surpass last year's, which we ended with 197 in the 117th Congress and 36 in the Senate in the 117th, so last term. It's supported by over 215 patient and provider organizations, so you're not alone. There's a huge community of advocates that are pushing for this legislation, and we're really excited that there's such strong bipartisan support on both House and the Senate legislation. Is a really important step toward getting the bill passed. We saw in May that the Senate Health Committee included the step therapy language in a pharmacy benefit manager package that was passed. This is the furthest action that the legislation has seen to date. So we're really excited to keep engaging on that. That committee is moving forward, and we're very excited to see what might come about in the Senate. On the House side, it must also pass through committee. So we have the House Education and Workforce Committee that is actually meeting today on a hearing, and we are hopeful that they will include the bill in a potential markup next month. So the asks of what you can do are to urge any co-sponsorship, urge your member to not only co-sponsor the bill, but to pass the bill. If they sit on the Education and Workforce Committee, we're urging them to include the bill in a committee markup and get that moved forward. Some of these opportunities could be sharing your story. If you have a step therapy experience, that is really one of the key ways that legislators love to hear your experience, your story, and then encourage them to pass the bill. So I did make a couple graphs because I know we all, let's go to the next slide, Caitlin. I know we all love to see visually, like, what is my state doing? How are we looking? So on the Senate side, I just put together a quick, in the light green, there are 17 states as of last week that had at least one senator sponsoring the bill, which is amazing. There are 6 states that have both senators sponsoring from your state. So your call to action in the Senate, if you see that your state doesn't have a senator that is co-sponsored, you're going to reach out to them and ask them to co-sponsor the bill and then to pass it. Because now in the Senate, we're looking for passage of the legislation. So to pass committee, the next step is the full floor. And then next slide, please, is the House slide. The House obviously has a significantly larger number of members, so we have more opportunities to target and get co-sponsorship. The goal is about 218. That's kind of the middle 50% of the members is 218. So we're well on target to meet and surpass last year's goal, which was 197, where we ended last year. So The darker the color, the more percentage of your members that have signed on as co-sponsors. We would love to see this turn all dark green, all states get all of your members to add on as co-sponsors. And really, we're looking for some common sense guardrails, some protections for patients, and the ability to appeal any insurance decisions so that you can get the best medication out there for you and protect the relationship that you and your provider have set. And that is the Safe Step Act. And I am open for any questions, and thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you so much. We do have one question for you in the chat. Someone is asking if you have a link where advocates can learn more or maybe fill out an action alert on the Safe Step Act to have a message sent to their members.
Sure. So we do have, there are 215 coalition members that are a part of this. I, as the Arthritis Foundation, would be delighted to get you involved. Every Life Foundation is, of course, involved in the coalition, and they probably have their own language that you can share. We do have a general coalition-wide flyer that we can drop in here. It includes, the overall bill, what it does, the exceptions processes, a couple stories of patient experiences, and then it lists all of the endorsing organizations on there. I'll drop that in the link here too. But really, we're trying to encourage folks to get involved through the different organizations that you're involved in. I'll throw a plug out there. Next Tuesday, June 27th, we just announced that we're going to do a big coalition-wide day of action. So this would be a perfect opportunity for you to email your legislator and ask them to co-sponsor the bills and to encourage, if they're in the House side, a bill markup.
Awesome. Yes. Great plug. Love that. Thank you so much.